New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Inclusive Church. My name is Tracy Brown, and I am so glad that you are checking in and hanging out with me today for this episode. Oh my goodness. I want to dive right into the episode, but I know that I need to say a couple of things. One, just in case it is your very first time being exposed to the Inclusive Church, I'm the author of a book called Stained Glass Spirit, Becoming a Spiritual Community Where Oneness Does Not Require Sameness. And the next book, coming in a few months, is The Inclusive Church. And this show is an opportunity for all of us who are committed to creating inclusive spiritual communities to touch base, to get a reminder, maybe even to be inspired to take things to the next level. And what we focus on are trends that impact the ability to be inclusive, skills or conversations that you might want to have in order to not only individually be inclusive, but create an entire community that is inclusive. And those answering questions that people have about how to deal with sticky situations that will come up if you are committed to being inclusive. And the show is Inclusive Church, not inclusive spiritual community or inclusive ministries, because I'm hoping you will join me in reclaiming the word church to not refer to property or a specific form, definitely not brick and mortar building. And instead, when we say church, that we are talking about the people, in whatever ways people gather to study spiritual principle, to teach spiritual principle, and to practice spiritual principle. Now, having said all of that, I'm diving in, because those of you who do know the show, you know that if I don't have a guest with me, I try to target about 30 minutes. When I have a guest, we go usually 50 minutes, 55 minutes, almost an hour. But if it's just me, I try to focus in so that you can get something practical and useful and then go into the rest of your day. So you could be like Anita and you could say hello to me. Hi, Anita, in the chat or in the comment section, depending on which platform you're on. And it's not a requirement, but I'm happy to see who's present and where you're from and what you're thinking about as we go through our time together today. So, what is the theme for today. Today's featured focus is heaven on earth. Is that what you're using as the foundation for your commitment to inclusion? Or are you using something else? Heaven on earth. Now, for me, and I'm not saying you must use heaven on earth as your foundation, but what I'm inviting you to consider is this, and it's in the description of the show, so you can go back to it as you're thinking about it more. But I was in a conversation with someone a few days ago, which often is the motivation for whatever I talk about. And we were talking about what terms we use and the pros and the cons of using terms like social justice or social or sacred activism, and what's underneath that. And so my question for you to think about is your commitment to being inclusive grounded in creating an experience of heaven on earth? Or is your commitment to being inclusive grounded in societal norms and terms? Is your commitment to being inclusive grounded in wanting to create justice, wanting to eliminate discrimination, wanting to gain political power or respect for a group of people, not necessarily just for you individually? And this is really important because sometimes I've talked with people who are very, very, very frustrated that in their New Thought spiritual community, where they think everybody is all about love, but they're not responding in a positive or an affirmative or a participative way to the way that it's being presented. So for me, I've always been really, really, really clear that my focus on inclusion comes from the place of a commitment to do my part in creating or co-creating heaven on earth. And that means, yes, that means that some of the things that are happening in society today or over time doesn't look like heaven on earth, at least the way that I imagine heaven. And so, shouldn't we eliminate all those things? Maybe. But do we eliminate them by fighting against them? Do we eliminate them by making them wrong and having people dig in because they're comfortable or they are benefiting? Or do we make changes based on what we want to see and our vision for the world? Now, I'll admit, as a Black woman who grew up in the United States during all kinds of tumultuous times where race was a factor, race and ethnicity have been factors, maybe part of it for me is that um, what is happening in society is nothing new. I mean, maybe it's escalated some, maybe there are certain aspects that require more attention than others or that then required attention 10 years ago. But the foundational piece has always been there for me. And I really have not consciously thought about this until it's coming out of my mouth now, and it's the first time I have thought about it this way. Growing up as a Black child and knowing that there were systems in the United States that were designed and supported by legalities and by institutions and by systems When I was very young, growing up in the Baptist church, I remember being taught that human beings, especially white people who were in power positions or decision-making positions, would behave in their best interest, not necessarily with a commitment to deliver or create what God had intended. And instead of making me angry, I mean, yes, angry on a certain level, but I was taught, so it is up to me to look beyond the human definition into the eternal or the spiritual or the religious definition of what is good, what is right, um, what demonstrates the love of God. And so I had not really thought about that until just now. I was primed from a very young age not to look at whatever the current human laws and legislation and standards are, because a human being made those rules, or a group of human beings made those rules, and there is a higher power. There is a higher way to live life, a higher, better way to live life. And so I was taught pretty young not to look at the standards set by white people. At the same time, I was taught that I had to be personally responsible for the standards I set for myself and the action that I take. I was also taught you are meant to be a leader, and you are responsible for not only your own individual actions and choices, but how you impact others and the world. So I guess I really shouldn't be surprised that as I have grown up and as I have been in different career situations, different spiritual leadership situations, that I'm always looking ahead and I'm always looking toward what I want to create, not what is designed to hold me back. So, now that I have kind of processed all of that in my head, it's like, oh, yeah, in our spiritual communities, if we believe what we teach, then we already know that all of life has been created purposefully to be an expression of life and more life. Right? We know, if we believe in our spiritual teachings in New Thought, that every person is made whole and perfect and complete, or a unique emanation of the divine source in a unique way, in a unique package to do unique things. And that there is really no competition, because it takes all of us to evidence the oneness that we teach. So, like, I could probably go on for 15 or 20 minutes with all the different beliefs that we have that support this idea that heaven is not a place that is up in the sky where you're going to get saved and you are, it's not there. It is a place that we experience, or it is an experience that we have. And in our lives, and the phrase heaven on earth is a representation of the commitment to do that, to create or to be heaven on earth. And one of my favorite quotes that I keep close by when I'm talking or thinking about inclusive churches is this one, because it's not just in New Thought, right? We live in a society that is more than New Thought. But this Bible scripture from the 7th chapter of Revelations is one that if you've been around me any length of time, you probably have heard me quote it before because I love this scripture. Revelation 7, verse 9. After this, I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes with palm branches in their hand. Repeating. After this I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes with palm branches in their hand. I love this scripture because it gives us a picture of all people, more people than you could humanly count, speaking different languages, coming from every possible nation, all tribes. And even though they are from all nations, all tribes, and there are more people than you can count, and they're speaking different languages, they're all standing together. They're all wearing white robes, even though they are different from one another in significant ways. They are all together with palm branches, and the symbolism in the Bible of palm branches, right? Praise and peace and honor. Everybody together without eliminating the things that distinguish them from one another. So not a melting pot where, we're all together, we're all in white robes, and so we're all the same. No, oneness does not require sameness. In fact, oneness celebrates the ways that we are different from one another. And when we come together, we get to honor all the many faces of God, all the many ways that God shows up in physical human form. That is what true inclusion is about, in my opinion. I will add that, you could just put that in every few sentences, in Tracy's opinion. And you're not required to agree with me, but it does help if you do. Just kidding. It helps you understand where I'm coming from, whether you agree with me or not. And so when we think about the words that we use, so if we say we're committed to social justice, for example, then there is a possibility for people to interpret that as based on the societal rules of today, we want justice, which then again is indicating that justice does not already exist. And so we're going to fight for social justice for a group of people. Okay, I may be angry that there is injustice, but what I'm fighting for and what I'm working toward is freedom, or I'm working toward harmony, or I'm the spiritual quality of harmony. Not that human limited harmony of, can we all just get along? Let's just hold hands and sing kumbaya. No, I'm talking about the spiritual quality of harmony and wholeness, that all things that are very different fit together and create the puzzle that works well together. And when we use phrases in our spiritual communities that we are going to take a stand and we are going to eliminate discrimination, we are actually driving energy toward a focus on discrimination and on fighting against what currently is. When what we teach in our spiritual traditions is to create a vision and let that vision pull you. And so, how we language the work that we're doing is critical if we are intentional about building and then expanding an infinite number of people being committed to being inclusive within our church as well as within the world. So you may all, it may or may, it may make sense to you. You may even say, yes, that's how I personally feel. But the reason I'm bringing this up on Inclusive Church is because a part of our mission in this show really is, are these the conversations you're having with people in your spiritual community? Too many leaders make the mistake of saying, well, I know why I'm doing it, and so I'm just going to keep leading from that perspective. But people in our churches need to be having these conversations, because otherwise they're just making assumptions based on what they hear, or based on what they hear even outside of our church. So if the only time people hear anything about activism is related to politics, then you can say sacred activism, and people in your church will hear sacred political fighting. And how does that make sense? Sacred activism or sacred activists, do they have a positive connotation about being an activist? Many people in New Thought do not, because it hasn't been defined for them simply as taking action toward a sacred vision. It has been left undefined, and so the definition that many people have is, you're saying I must go out and be in protests, and I must, carry picket signs, and I must go where the heat is and give more heat. And the behavior that actually might happen, but what's the motivation? Is the motivation to fight and to be an activist in the political framework, or have we redefined it and reclaimed it? And the only way you can do that is if you're having conversations. You can't lecture people to an understanding. So even if your personal understanding is clean and clear, are you facilitating the conversation with other leaders and then with other members of the congregation? So that's why we're talking today about, is your foundational motivation and inspiration for being inclusive, is it heaven on earth? Or is it fighting against the wrongs of humanity? Now, either way, I guess we're fighting that question. Are you fighting against injustice, or are you fighting for harmony, or for freedom, or for wholeness? And I'm taking a breath so that inside yourself you can ask that question to yourself. Oh, am I fighting against injustice? Yes. Mm-hmm. And we teach, well, we don't actually teach, but we often consider, especially in religious science, the question of, or the challenge to be for something and against nothing. So what am I for? Another way to find out if you're fighting against something or fighting for something, or choosing your actions to shut something down, or choosing your actions to build something new or to innovate. Another way to ask yourself the question is to actually, say, am I putting my energy in something that makes something smaller or that expands something to reflect more of the truth of God? And the am I fighting against injustice or am I fighting for harmony or freedom? Some of you um, have even participated in a program I used to do a 5-day challenge called Breaking the Silence, the Breaking the Silence challenge, to encourage people to speak up for what they wanted as it relates to interrupting or ending race-based hatred and violence. And in the 5-day challenge, the most difficult day, every time I facilitated the Break the Silence challenge, the most difficult day for the most people was when I challenged them to describe or define what the world looks like if there is no race-based hatred and violence. What would people be doing and saying? How would it look? How would society work? What's your vision for what the world would look like if there was no race-based hatred and violence? And you would think, oh, well, that's easy. But it was hard for almost everyone because they kept saying, well, there wouldn't be hatred. Well, there wouldn't be racism. Well, there wouldn't be um, shooting black people in police custody. Well, there wouldn't be this, there wouldn't be that. And I'm like, you're telling me all the things that would go away, but you're not describing what the world is like. You're not describing the kinds of conversations that people would be having if they weren't talking about this. Like, hello, actually, what is the vision? If that goes away, what kind of world do we live in? Well, what you would describe then would be heaven on earth. What you would describe would be people engaging with people from other groups than their own in a comfortable way. I mean, you would be able to really have a clear vision. And most of us don't because we focus our entire energy, all of our energy, on being inclusive as making something we don't want go away, fighting against what we don't want. So it's a big challenge. I am not saying it's easy, but I am encouraging you to not only think about this for yourself, but to also provide opportunities within your spiritual circle or community to have these kinds of conversations, to actually ask, what do you think when we say sacred activism? What comes to mind when we say that we want to eliminate discrimination and that is because we believe all people have been created as an emanation of God? Take a spiritual principle and ask people, what does it mean to experience harmony in your life and in the world as it relates to the diversity that exists? Have the conversation. Please. I know I kind of said that like, have the conversation. That is your job. But I do mean it as an invitation. Frame inclusion as a part of your spiritual practice or your application of spiritual principle in the world we live in today. It's not easy to do, but it's what we can do that will enroll many, many more people in wanting to live a life and be a part of a spiritual community that is completely committed to being inclusive. So I think that's the show for today. Heaven on Earth, what is the foundation for your commitment to being inclusive in today's world? My name is Tracy Brown. Please join me again next Tuesday at noon Mountain Time, right here on the New Thought Media Network.
Thanks for watching The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. Join us again next week at 12 noon Mountain Time.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.